What's happening, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is drummer Greg Travasos of Lafayette, Louisiana's Radiant Knife, and who also tours with Lafayette artist Brother Deej. But Greg and I get into the process of putting together their killer double EP, The Body and the Ghost. Both of our first big arena rock shows that we went to as little kids. Going down hair metal rabbit holes, prog rock, stoner rock, and all the rocks in between, and a whole lot more. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and Amazon Music Podcast, to name a few. Feel free to check out any of the previous 200 plus episodes or give me a like, a subscription, and or a positive review, as the support is appreciated. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking to release some vinyl, hit them up at neworleansrecordpress.com and check out all the electroplating, mastering, design, packaging, vinyl coloring options, and they got a real-time quote generator to keep tabs on it all. They also print 12 and 7-inch records in 150 and 180 gram variants, and they do small runs of 100 and larger runs up into the thousands. So hit them up, and that's neworleansrecordpress.com. So here we go. Greg Travasos, Radiant Knife, proggy stoner psych rock for the win, boys. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! I'm here with Greg Travasos of Lafayette, Louisiana's own Radiant Knife. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, man, and I'm glad to catch up with you, but how are you doing, you raging Cajun coon-ass motherfucker, you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. It's hot, got some weather, some rain, but it's been pretty hot the last 2 months, so faring through it.
I hear you, man. I was talking to you earlier about it, and kind of reminiscing on all the ridiculous jobs that I had as just sort of odd job journeyman in my life, in living in Louisiana for those first 29 years prior to moving to New York. But I just, when I think it is a different heat here, having relocated from New York now to Salt Lake City, it's the desert heat. It is as though there's just no ozone here. So the sun is especially brutal, and you can kind of step into the shade and you don't get the humidity that you would get down there. But when it's 115 degrees like it was today in my driveway, it kind of doesn't matter if you step into the shade or not anymore at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine, like, you know, you're grilling out there, you know. It's got to be brutal. I mean, we get the heat here. It's just the humidity adds that extra, like, heat temperature. It's the same thing with the cold, you know, just
totally.
It just gets you to the bone.
It does, man. One of the I've experienced it on different levels, having worked construction down there, and again, as you said, yeah, the humidity is just the wet blanket on top of the heat, and there's no escaping it. You sweat at night, and it's just its own thing. I'm wondering if I haven't been out here even for this amount of time, if I go back and experience the Louisiana summer, if I've defected, can I handle it even more? I don't even know, man.
Yeah. You could probably handle it. I mean, you're probably so dried up right now. You just bubble up with just moisture.
Oh my God, man. Well, I wanted to tell you, man, congrats, by the way, on 2020's The Body and its other half, The Ghost. And I definitely want to talk to you more about those records. I think they're super cool, sound great.
Thank you.
Great songwriting. I love the whole sort of psych, sludge, stoner, prog thing that y'all do. But tell me a little bit about this split that I think y'all just did with Baton Rouge's Woorms. And was that a cassette-only release? What's the deal with that?
It was a split cassette Sludge Lord had put together, and then he did a digital release after that. I think he only did like 100 pressings of it or whatever, like of the tape.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he just pretty much put that out for us, and it's been pretty good.
Nice, man. I'm not familiar with Woorms actually, but I'll have to check them out for sure, man. What's y'all's connection with them? Was that all through Sludge Lord?
Yeah, it was through Sludge Lord. This guy Joey Carbo, he's in Baton Rouge. I think he's been doing. Well, he's not in Baton Rouge anymore. I think he's in Austin. I'm not sure where he's located right now.
Yeah.
He put a split with us on that. I think Sludge Lord had also did some stuff with him before, and then I think Stephen, guitar player from Radiant Knife, has played with him in the past. So there's that connection.
Gotcha. Well, between the 4 full lengths that the band has put out, Science Fiction, The Body, The Ghost, the self-titled one prior to that. Tell me a little bit about the concepts, I guess, behind The Body and The Ghost, because in listening to it, by just throwing it out there, that it may be somewhat of a concept record. When I listen to it in its entirety, it certainly does seem as though it is a concept record. So even if it's not, you certainly tricked me into thinking that it was. But if it is, what were some of the concepts behind the writing of those two? And then we can talk a little bit about recording it as well.
Yeah, so we had these songs set up, and then Stephen had some stuff also instrumental, and I think 2 of the tracks on there, I believe, on The Ghost, I did drums. But yeah, I guess we had all this stuff built up, a lot of songs, and we just kind of split them, and it's kind of in a concept, I guess. Stephen just kind of went with The Body, was like more of, flesh and life on earth and whatever, and The Ghost is kind of transcending that. So it's like a 2-piece thing of body, and spirit leaving. But yeah, that's kind of, I mean, Steve would definitely go more into detail about that, but it's basically that in a sense, the 2 pieces together. I mean, so we just did 2 EPs on it and put them out at different times. So.
Nice. Who did the cover artwork? Because I really dig it.
Terry Groh. He's a tattoo artist here. He does paintings and art. He's an old friend of mine from years ago. And he pieced it together. We just went and talked to him, and he threw it together, and it came out killer.
Nice.
He's done some other artwork for other bands. I think he did Behold the Octopus, I believe. Mm-hmm. That's the name. And Dysrhythmia.
Nice.
So he's been kind of doing that for a few years. He did their albums. So we're like, man, let's get Terry to do one for us.
Absolutely.
He came through.
Yeah, especially if it's going to be some continuity between sort of 2 EPs like that, to have 2 complementary designs, that certainly ties it all together at the very least. Just in being an old guy who used to go to cassette and record stores and buy things because I thought the covers looked cool, because I'm old like that.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing too. I think at our age group, we're just like, this looks rad, let's put it on, and then most of the time it's pretty good. Sometimes it's like terrible, but you got to take a chance.
That's the way it goes. But I tell you what, my ongoing joke is, like, if there was any band that had the most deceptive, like, doom metal, prototypical art that even High on Fire would later jack, the band Molly Hatchet. Like, if you look at their record covers, it's like a dude, like a Viking on a horse with a hatchet and like, like a falcon on his shoulder and the whole thing. And you listen to it and you're like, what the fuck, man? This doesn't sound anything like these covers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you think it'd be something brutal. It's like opposite.
Not brutal. Not brutal at all. Joke's on you.
Not brutal.
Oh, my God, man. Well, as far as the recording for those 2, was all that done out at Stephen's kind of home studio? And is that also where y'all recorded all the records thus far?
Yeah, it's been a slow process. Been building it up since we started. He had built a studio in the back, and it's been kind of added onto it. But yeah. We recorded it there on the weekends. We just kind of get it at it when we could, and yeah, we did it at his place, all those records. And I think the next one we're going to probably do it, I'm assuming.
I mean, y'all might as well, man. I'll go into how I know Stephen. It goes quite far back, but my dad's girlfriend she lives in Broussard, Louisiana, and he spends a lot of his time there with her. Which is just right outside of Lafayette. So the last time that we went out and visited him, actually, I called Stephen and we went and caught up with him, and he showed me the studio and everything, because all I had seen, all I had seen prior to that was on Instagram and whatever videos, Radiant Night posts of y'all jamming in that space. I was like, God, that looks amazing. And turns out, he's totally got like the jam space / recording studio and everything else all in one. So I can imagine that would be pretty cool, just being able to be like, all right, we're going back to the very place, same vibe, we dig it, we wrote the songs here, we jammed them here, and now we're going to record them all one shot. I dig that concept. That's awesome that y'all could do that.
Yeah, we like having. I mean, before that, we used to practice. Well, in our old bands, and I think he was practicing there for a while too, up until Radiant Knife started. It's like some sheds out in Broussard.
Oh,
They were
wow.
just hot, and it sounded terrible. And so I think he was at the point of like, I'm tired of driving out here, it's sweating, and I was too. When I first moved back, I was kind of floating over there too, and I was just like, man, we need to get something with the AC in it. Like,
Fuck yeah, you do,
we,
man.
we could totally step it up now. We're not like 20 anymore, so.
Right. Oh my God. Pre Katrina, my band, it was this rock and roll band. Our AC died, and we were like, we'll get through the summer. And I mean, there were high ceilings, and we could turn on fans, but man, yeah, getting through a Louisiana summer, practicing like that, playing drums and doing the whole thing, I would just roll in with like a gallon of water and maybe some cold beers and a bathing suit and just come out of there. I lost so much weight that summer. It was fucking outrageous.
I bet, yeah. Yeah, it gets brutal, man. Those things are like hot boxes too. It's like, and even if you go there at 8:00 at night, it's still like hot as shit. So.
Absolutely, my God.
Yeah.
Well, and sort of connecting some of the dots in the way that I know the guitarist, vocalist, Stephen. The crazy thing is that it's the connections are just bizarre, man. So like in the late '90s, one of my old bands played a show in New Orleans, uptown at Jimmy's, with his band at the time, Ice Pick Revival, because I think the connection was that I knew the bass player, because I used to have these crazy like acid keg parties when my dad was out of town, out at his house out in the country, and we had like rope swings and this pond, and we would just like eat acid and like go swinging in rope swings out in oak trees and jumping in the pond and shit, and I'm pretty sure his bass player Ryan Pankratz came out to one of those, and I think that's how I ultimately knew him, and we stayed in touch, and he was like, yeah, I'm playing in this band in Lafayette. And so at some point in the late 90s we played this show. I believe Spickle from New Orleans was also on that gig.
Yeah.
And it seems like an eternity ago. Again, I believe it was like probably 98, so sometime in the late 90s. And then we would go, that band at the time, we would go play in Lafayette. I remember one time I sent them like a flyer that had the wrong date, and they fixed it. I don't remember if it was Ryan or Steven or one of them, and then like hung up the correct flyer for me. I was always impressed that they did that. And then, I mean, I know Steven did Collapsar, and yeah, he did Radon Kong, and then at some point I got him to work on like one of the versions of the band that would become Beast Modulus. It was actually Beast Modulus for the one gig that we played at the Hi-Ho in New Orleans, and that so we did that, and then I know he was doing Radon Kong at the time, and then Radiant Knife came about. But it's just kind of funny. Steven and I have crossed paths literally since like the late 90s.
Man, that's a long time.
Yeah, dude, it's like a quarter century probably.
I know.
Oh my God, man. Well, what's your story of playing drums? And it sounds like you grew up in Lafayette. I mean, I know some people that grew up out there, and it seems like playing in Cajun bands was sort of a rite of passage. How did you end up gravitating towards the drums in the first place? And then what were you kind of getting into in Lafayette when you were growing up?
I mean, I was super hyper when I was young. I used to tap on stuff, I guess I remember tapping on desks and stuff at like 8 or 10. The same story, I guess, you hear from every drummer. Yeah. But I had a buddy in my neighborhood I used to live in. I guess I was like 11 or 12, and his older brother had a drum kit. And I went and started playing on it. I'd go as much as I could, and I just got obsessed with it. And I just begged my mom to get me a drum kit for my birthday.
Yeah.
What she did was like a new pawn shop drum kit. It's called Cadence or something.
Really?
I don't remember, but yeah, it was a cheap drum kit. And there's merit to getting that, as a beginner, because it breaks and you have to fix it, and you get to really kind of dig in to the drums and see how everything functions.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. And yeah, I was like, I never, I didn't play any Cajun bands. I kind of started out with rock and punk during high school.
Right.
There was a bunch of punk bands and metal bands, and just the first real band was like a cover band. It was pretty good, I guess. I mean, it was fun.
What covers did y'all do?
I mean, it was like Slayer, Sepultura, Metallica.
Yeah.
I was like 14 years old, 13, 14. We're just like obsessed with those bands.
Totally.
And he lived out in the country in Doosan, which is like far, it's probably like 10, 15 miles from where I was at in Lafayette. So we used to go out there at sleepovers, when we were younger, and stay there for the weekend and jam. And that's how it kind of, it's just been like that since, pretty much, hasn't stopped.
Crazy. It's funny, man. I've known some killer drummers by way of seeing them in New Orleans, really. And I've interviewed a couple of them from Lafayette, and Ricky Sebastian and like Doug Below, and some of these guys that were Lafayette dudes who kind of ended up in New Orleans, and then I would see them around. And always dug their playing, and I think Lafayette has really bred some killer drummers. Were there any local guys of any genre, for that matter, that you dug, that you were able to see live, kind of growing up, that really left an impression on you?
In high school, they used to have this death metal band in Lafayette, and the drummer, when I first saw him, I was like, man, that stuff's awesome, and that kind of led me down this death metal thing for a little bit. And this other guy, he has a studio now. I don't think he plays drums anymore, but he was a friend, and I'd watch him play, and it was like kind of watching how it was done, and left an impression. I was like, man, this is really cool. Especially where I was.
Yeah. What year was that you were seeing like death metal in Lafayette, Louisiana then?
Oh God, probably 96, 95.
Wow.
This is around when Acid Bath too. I saw Acid Bath. I can't remember the drummer's name.
Yeah.
I saw them at Main Street in Brobridge.
Wow.
That was amazing. I saw Soylent Green too, I think, around that time. So
wow.
You're seeing those guys playing, and it's so loud and in your face. Just like, man, they're just killing it up there, and it just makes you want to go home and play more.
Yeah, that's crazy that you saw Acid Bath and Soylent Green back in the days. Like, I knew of those bands. I don't know that I saw them. I think I saw I Hate God like in '92, I want to say, at this little place, the Abstract Cafe, which was really just like a cinder block shed that had a PA and like a little like lamp light on it, like back in the day. And I'd talk about it. I've interviewed Jimmy Bauer as well. And I remember telling him, I was like, that shit was terrifying. I watched like a song and a half. I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here before somebody dies. It was terrifying. They looked terrifying. Their music was terrifying. I couldn't see anything. It was in a shed. It was hot in the summer. I was just like, oh my God, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's crazy that you saw Tommy with Soylent Green back in the day. That guy was playing some really intense. I mean, the entire time that he was in Soylent Green was really like playing some intense, like blasting grindcore, like badassness. That dude's been doing it for a long time.
A guy I played with after his band, but the band that from Lafayette was called Sabbatic Feast, and I think they played with him at Main Street. But there was like, at the time, I don't think they were as big. There's probably like 20 or 30 people there. But it was in little old Brobridge, which is outside of here, and it was the only all ages venue. So when I was coming up too, I'd play there with some bands. But every time I had shows, that was where we went. We couldn't get to the other venues, so they would come by and play.
Crazy. Yeah, that sounds like so where I saw I Hate God was a similar thing. It was kind of an all ages venue. And because it was a coffee shop / bookstore in the front, and then they had a venue in the back, and it was in a pretty dangerous sort of Lower Garden District, Magazine Street area at the time, and in the 90s it was pretty sketchy. But just down the street there was the RC Bridge Lounge, and every like Helmet played there, Gigi Allen played there, so there were like some pretty crazy bands that would come through in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was like a block or two. So you could like run from one to the other down in that neighborhood at the time, and hopefully everything was cool. But it was a really bizarre like 1-2 venue sort of underground connection that was happening at that time in New Orleans, and I absolutely loved that time, man. It was super, super cool.
Yeah, there was a time, I guess, for me, it was impressionable, like from like, I guess 95, 96 to like up to 2004 or 5 was like, in Lafayette especially, it was a lot of good bands, a lot of good music, and it was awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, when I listen to some of the Radiant Knife stuff, and especially like knowing Steven, and he actually turned me on to this amazing King Crimson record, which I'm sure you've heard him rant and rave about, that King Crimson Live US record. I had actually never heard it, and at some point he told me, he's like, dude, it's like the record I listen to the most. It's like my favorite record. And I was just thinking, he's such a riff monster, crazy genius weirdo musician. I was like, all right, I got to check it out. And I got it on vinyl, and I too now listen to it all the time. My wife fucking hates it. I can't play it when she's around, but when she and the kids go to bed.
Yeah, it's too crazy, man. Bill Bruford kills it, man. All that stuff they do. Red's a great album. I mean, that's like probably my favorite. I haven't listened to that live one. I know y'all talk about it a lot, but I haven't really dug into it.
Oh man, you definitely worth getting into, because I mean, I agree with you. Red is my favorite, but like Starless Bible Black and Lark's Tongue and Aspic, that's the John Wetton, Bill Bruford, Robert Fripp era of those three. And I believe Live in USA came out in like 75. So it's kind of them at the apex of it. And one of the things that I just kind of joke about all the time is I can't quite imagine showing up, as a few of those people clearly would have had to have been in the audience, who knew nothing about that band and just went there having like smoked some weed and having some drinks. Like, we're going to go check out this King Crimson quote unquote band. And then they just get subjected to that insane shit. I just can't imagine it, man.
Yeah.
Are there other prog bands that you got into? Because I certainly hear some prog elements within Radiant Knife, and I'm not sure where that's coming from, if that's collectively or if that's mostly Steven doing his King Crimson thing.
I mean, Rush mainly. I mean, Rush was that was, my go-to when I was younger. I still listen to Rush, but yeah, Neil Peart, of course, is like, it's awesome. I just always admired how he played, and he's just killer. So, I mean, I got that prog stuff from there, and it kind of went down the rabbit hole after that, but that was probably the main thing for me,
Yeah.
Coming up too, I was like, I listen to a lot of Rush, so.
Yeah, it's funny, man. The only Rush vinyl that I have is the first record, which Neil Peart isn't even on, and
Yeah.
I like the kind of proto stoner nature of that shit. I love that record. It's super cool. But having spoken to a lot of drummers and talked to them about their influence, I realized that being a fan of them, I am sort of vicariously influenced by Neil Peart because of how big of a fans they were,
Yeah, man. I mean, any drummer, you got to give props to him. Gosh, Chronicles was like, my aunt had given it to me. I used to play that every night going to bed, just like, just sleeping and just like listening to it and man, just memorizing all the parts and. Yeah, super influence on me early on for sure.
Yeah, were you playing along with it on your drum set, like on headphones necessarily, or were you just kind of listening to it and sort of absorbing it that way?
Both. I mean, I'd like kind of, when I could, I'd put it on if I had access to the drums where I was. I'd go put it on and try to mimic what he was doing. Or like I'd sit and tap, I used to have a VHS. I forget the name of that one. It's a live thing they had. I used to play that all the time and just kind of sit and tap and watch how he was doing it. And his drum kit was like super huge and awesome. So you're learning it and you're kind of figuring out through the headphones and whatnot. And it might sound good in your head, but
it's funny, man. I don't know. Again, because I've sort of reversed my way of acknowledging that I've probably been vicariously influenced by Neil Peart. One of the records in particular where I realized how heavy I think that influence was, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but 91 Corrosion of Conformity's Blind record, Reed Mullins playing on that. Like, it's got this stoner, like southern thing happening musically with the grooves and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the fills in particular especially remind me in sort of the way he orchestrates the toms, the cymbal hits, and like all this stuff is very, very Neil Peart, and way much more on that record in particular than you will hear on any of the other records. So that is like a major influence on me. So again, it kind of reverts back to the Neil Peart thing, and having spoke to John Stanier of Helmet and Battles and Tomahawk and all that, like, he's
Yeah.
his number one influence. He will tell you straight up as like Neil Peart. So again, like between Reed Mullen and John Stanier, those were two massive influences on me in the 90s that again revert back to Neil Peart.
Yeah, and they're good influences. I mean, those guys are on another level.
Are there any modern sort of psych, stoner, sludgy sort of bands that you dig?
As far as stoner sludge stuff, I don't really listen to that much of that. I don't think Stephen does either. It's just kind of how it all comes out. I couldn't really name you too many current bands right now,
Right. Did you find like during COVID that you obsessively listened to anything in particular? I certainly had my own little wormhole obsessions that I went through.
Man, kind of a guilty pleasure, but Scorpions.
Nice.
In Trance.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like,
oh, that record's killer.
I've just been kind of jamming that and then going further in their stuff later on. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of gotten like this weird 80s like metal, like hair metal stuff lately.
Yeah.
And it might have been from my old roommate, but just, I don't know what it is. Like I never liked it or like thought to give it a listen, but I've just been kind of going through it, and it's pretty awesome.
Oh, dude, I have too. I grew up on it. Like I graduated high school in 95, so I was definitely like way into, I mean, my first two records, I believe, and they both came out in 83 were Motley Crue Shout at the Devil and Ozzy's Bark at the Moon. So it totally started there in the early 80s. And of course, like as the 80s progressed, it got more and more absurd. But I too definitely revisit like Twisted Sister, Queensryche. Fuck, I'll listen to the shit out of it.
Yeah, my first concert was Queensryche. I saw them in New Orleans, like in '95, I think it was, with big Typo Negative opened up for them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was Typo Negative. But I didn't know who they were. I was just like, I was, drug out there, and it was awesome. The show was crazy. I think it was at the UNO or something at the time.
So I saw them at the UNO Lakefront Arena on the Empire Tour, which would have been, I guess it was like early 90s. Suicidal Tendencies actually opened for them, and that's kind of the reason that I wanted to go see them, because I mean they were touring on the Lights Camera Revolution record, which came out in 90. So this was probably like 91. And it was hilarious, dude. The thing that I remember the most about it is that me and my friends, we showed up with blue bandanas, like we're some gangsters showing up to see Suicidal Tendencies, and we were sitting up in the balcony, and no one really was that into Suicidal Tendencies. Everybody was there for Queensryche, and me and my friends, we headbanged so hard we literally gave ourselves whiplash. My neck was fucked up for like 3 days after that.
Jesus. Yeah, this tour, I think this was 94, 95 when I saw him.
Okay.
And I just remember him coming out. He had like a sledgehammer. It was like all this theatrics. It was awesome. It was a show. We were like, in the stands kind of, I guess, I don't know how far we were, but
yeah,
I could still see it. I wasn't up close, but yeah, and I vaguely remember like Typo Negative a little bit, but I just remember Queensryche had like this show, man. It was crazy. That was the main thing. It was like he had the sledgehammers hitting something on the stage. I don't know what he was hitting. It looked awesome.
Oh my God! Do you remember the first like big show like that you went to? What was that?
That was it. That was the first one I did. Like that was the first rock concert. My aunt had an influence. She kind of raised, when I was coming up, she gave me all this kind of music of like Rush and Judas Priest and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, we're going to go to this concert." And I was like, well, she was like, "You got to, in order to go, you got to paint my fence." So I had to paint her fence. And then me, my cousin, and her, we went to New Orleans and we saw the show. And I was like, this is crazy. But yeah, that was like my first real big rock concert.
Yeah, man. I saw Motley Crue on the Girls tour. So That was like late 80s, and they played the Mississippi Gulf Coast Coliseum. And I still to this day, like, there are two things that I remember from that one as well. One, once we got there, I was like, I've never seen so many mullets in my life. It was fucking outrageous. And like fat tattooed people in scantily clad clothes with mullets, the men and the women, like everybody had fucking mullet cuts. It was goddamn ridiculous.
That's how you did it, man.
Yeah. And because it was the late 80s, wine coolers were a thing. So I remember like having a couple of wine coolers en route to the Mississippi Gulf Coast Coliseum with my buddy's sister who drove us there and chaperoned us. Pretty sure she was having some too. And yeah, we saw Motley Crue, Girls, Girls, Girls in the late 80s. It was fucking ridiculous. Oh my God, man. Well, if you grew up in Lafayette, man, at which point did you move out to Portland, Oregon? Because having spent a little bit of time out there, it's absolutely an epicenter for human ridiculousness, as far as I can tell.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And, it's outrageous.
It's crazy. Yeah, I think it was probably 2006. I was in a band here in Lafayette called The Object at the End of History, which is like a proggy metal instrumental band, and we toured, and I think we broke up, I think late 2004, 2005. So I got a little bit of a taste of touring and seeing the cities and stuff I had never been to. So a buddy was moving up there, so I went up and met him. I just wanted to get out of Lafayette. I was kind of wanted to explore, and I moved there in 2006, and yeah, it's a great place. I mean, the summers are awesome. You get to see all the mountains and the trees, and
absolutely,
you go camping a lot. But you have to endure a lot of rain and that overcast for like a few months.
Oh, absolutely.
So it got old after a while, but I still love it. I mean, I'd like to go visit again, and I still have my friends over there. It's a great place. I had some good memories over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the Northwest. And especially having been up to like northern Washington State, northwest Washington State, getting up there, it just makes me want to go up into Canada that much more, because it's just like, does this keep getting more beautiful? Is that what happens here?
Yeah, it's like it gets more prehistoric looking. I mean, you get into Vancouver, it's like the trees are way bigger. It's everything you would expect in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a little more chill, but it's awesome.
Nice. Growing up down in Louisiana, man, I always kind of joked that I was always doing dumb shit in the woods. I don't know if that was your experience or not, but it was just like perpetually like jumping out of trees into flooded creeks and doing all of the dumb shit. Like, was that pretty much your childhood?
Yeah, go swimming in the ditches, kicking, crawfish mounds, that's all. We all did that. Ride four-wheelers. It's a Southern thing, but yeah. Of course. I don't know anyone that hasn't done that here.
Well, if you move to a place like New York, you might find that no one has done that.
Right. And I wouldn't want to do that there either. So
it's just crazy, like talking to people in the Northeast coast, especially people that grew up there. It's as if like I grew up like in a Mark Twain novel, like eating crawfish and swimming in like flooded creeks and jumping out of trees and like just floating on logs and like doing all this crazy wild shit just because as far as I could tell, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, the parents, maybe I was a product of 70s parenting, but my parents just kind of let me just go wild out in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, we were always outside. We'd go play, go build camps. Smoke cigarettes, take cigarettes, go smoke them, maybe get a beer, and go. Had porn mags everywhere. It's like all in these woods. It was a way to get away. I mean, I'm not. It's like you could talk to anyone here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we did that." That's what everyone does.
Dude, I interviewed the drummer of the Giraffes, and he's originally from Texas, and we were both laughing hysterically talking about growing up in the South and how, like, if someone had like a fort or like a tree house, inevitably once you got there would be porn mags in it.
Yeah, and we'd also so in the neighborhood we're in, they had other kids that build camps. We'd go destroy them, and they'd find out, they come destroy ours, and we have like little camp war kind of things, It was awesome. Riding bikes. I mean, we rode everywhere. I mean, Lafayette I've ridden all over Lafayette. We just leave. Because my mom and dad were like, you got to get out of the house during the summer. You can't stay inside. So
right.
Me and my older brother, we just go all day and just go all over wherever.
Absolutely,
They didn't know
man.
that, but
I know. Well, that's the irony. Like, I feel like it's that much easier to check in with somebody with cell phones, internet, all of this shit. Back then, there was none of that, and our parents were still letting us run wild. And, like, again, yeah, like, I went everywhere on bikes. We were on bikes all day long.
I know. That's how we did it.
It was good times, man. It's good damn times. Oh, my God. That's good stuff. Before we go, man, let me ask you this. I know we talked a good bit about you working with Radiant Knife, but didn't necessarily touch on some of the work that you've done with other Lafayette musicians and even some of the subsequent tours that you might have done. So tell me a little bit about that.
Brother Deej mainly, keeps me busy. We tour a lot. We go to Europe, and since before COVID, we're touring and gigging a lot. But I've picked up some gigs, doing some stuff in the studio with some local guys, some singer-songwriter people, and
nice.
Just helping them put down some tracks.
Nice. Where have you gone to in Europe, man?
Cool. I mean, mostly Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like that's where we usually start the tours out, and then we do France. We've been Netherlands, Switzerland. We actually had a Switzerland festival coming up.
Nice.
Next month.
Awesome.
Just all over there. We've been to Serbia.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How was the Serbia gig?
Gosh, it was awesome. It was great. It was crazy getting in there. We were driving through Croatia. They had I guess at the border, they had guys with AKs, and they're pretty aggressive, like checking the van out.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got into Serbia, it was interesting. It was like pre-Soviet kind of buildings were a little beaten up and stuff like that, and graffiti, and people are kind of reserved, but they're really, really sweet once you start talking to them. But it was great.
That's awesome, man. I mean, are you able to, with the exception of COVID, are you able to like support yourself with like tours and this and that and the other, or do you still have to have some jobs, odd jobs, whatever it is, when you come back that will allow you to tour?
Yeah, I'll have a job where I can come back and work. They're very nice about that. But yeah, I've been working mostly more since, COVID for sure. So yeah, but before it was like, we'd leave for a couple of months, come back, I'd have a job. I was teaching at the time. And so after, before COVID, and then after that, I got another job since nothing was going on. So that's what happens.
That's awesome, man. The life of a touring musician, bouncing around, an odd job journeyman yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
It's crazy, man. Well, going forward, I mean, what do y'all have going on? I mean, in looking at the chronology of releases, it seems like y'all put out a pretty good amount of stuff. But if I recall right, I think the self-titled record came out in 2017, and you've put out. All things considered, I mean, I think the body between the body and the ghost, both of those are like probably 30 minutes each, right?
Yeah, I think like 30, 35 minutes.
Fuck, call them full lengths. You put 4 full lengths.
Yeah, full length. Yeah, you smash them together. It's a full. Yeah, I think we're probably going to the studio. I think we have something set up. Maybe I think September, October.
Nice.
I'm starting to go track out some stuff, and we've been recording other bands in Lafayette over there. So
cool.
We've been kind of pushing it, but since the COVID, I think it's okay.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, man. Well, the last time I was over there, yeah, like I said, I got to check out the space and loved it. So I think it's super cool. I haven't seen it myself to know that that's kind of where y'all are cranking out all this music. And it's just awesome. I definitely dig the music and the direction y'all are going. And it's my favorite band that Stephen's been in thus far. And I've seen and witnessed many of them over the years. So congrats on all that, and best of luck going forward, my man.
Man, thank you.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thanks to Greg for rapping. Thanks to Radiant Knife for cranking out the jams. Definitely cool talking to a fellow Louisiana boy about our ridiculous upbringings at times and influences and all that good stuff. So hope y'all dug it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.